we're always in danger, I feel, of like giving away the magic trick, you know, and sometimes I don't want to talk about how we did stuff as much, but of course you guys, this is important for you, so I'll talk about it. But, you know. A successful visual effect, in my opinion, is one that you just kind of like let go of because it just feels natural, it feels real. I felt like the animals there, the giant wolves, which very wisely you recommended we use horses as the base for it, because at one point we were not going to do that.
Right.
And then that was a shift in the plan of how to make these things real. Between the rendering and Natasha's believability with how she approaches them, that you just kind of let go of the fact that they're riding these giant beasts, you know, that aren't from our world at all. Because they're one of the things we were most worried about going in.
Yeah, it's true.
And in the end, I don't even think about them because I think they're so effective. I worry about a whole bunch of other things. So talk about the howlers a little bit.
I think there's a couple of things that were really key on helping making them successful. I think one of them was the fact that, like in anything, you know, even now when you talk to artists and they're trying to create a thing in a frame, you want to know, what's your reference? What are you looking at? Do you have a landscape picture? Do you have a picture of a creature as a fish? What's your reference? And obviously, the reference was your dog, Wolfie.
My dog, he was there.
Which was really beneficial because, you know, oftentimes you would send me a cell phone picture of Wolfie lying down or doing something, and the way that the hair was matted or the way that the hair was groomed or whatever it always kind of gave us that single reference point, rather than kind of constantly chasing a fantastical idea.
Right.
It was always bringing it back to reality. Once you and Doug had worked on the designs and got those fantastical elements in there, it's like, okay, now this is what we need to kind of follow. We always had it in the back of our minds that the horse might need to be the driver, but one of the things that was challenging, and both Hal and Cav had talked about, was the anatomy of a horse, anatomy of a dog, are quite different.
Right.
But again, both you and Doug were flexible. Once we brought information to the table and kind of showed you what we wanted to do, you were flexible enough to change the anatomy of the howler to allow it to work better with the horse being the driver. And I think the one thing that we learned is, as long as we stayed away from the trot, we felt like it would work.
Yeah, I mean, they just have a different gait, you know, how they move. So you've got to sort of make sure that what you shoot on set is, you know, what we match with the CG. And then giving it personality, you know, Wolfie is a real personality, you know.
Yeah.
And I love those
go that
scenes.
broad, but, you know.
Yeah, but I love those scenes that you wrote where, you know, you see the interaction between the rider and the wolf, you know, and you see the howlers interacting with the people, and, you know, and fun little moments.
Well, I think that was a challenge, but it was interesting because I come from animation, and so I think my leaning is to give an animal a lot of character.
Yeah.
You know, and I have a dog, so I know he has a lot of character, like you said, but as animators, we had to sit there and say, well, how much would be too much? When has this character of this animal gone too far? Knowing that even in Star Wars, we have things that very much are like Muppets and puppets and, you know, fun over-the-top creatures. Yes. But so when Sabine is scolding it or arguing with it, it has to have a personality where it looks sad or it looks afraid. I was saying it goes through a little arc from being something that's almost hideous looking when it's introduced and maybe aggressive or maybe dangerous to being almost feeling quite domesticated. Yeah. Like it's her buddy, it's her dog. So, you know, that's a level of animation to try to get that character feeling believable, real, but also Star Wars real, so it fits in with the whole landscape of creatures we've had in the entire saga.
Yeah. I think the other thing that was really helpful, it was very clear to you from the very beginning the character of the howler, but in addition to that, creating the story reel, as we always do on these shows, when you worked with the sound design in the edit to put in the right kind of sounds that helped describe to the animators and everybody working on it what you were trying to get across in that particular moment, rather than just trying to read the page and look at a guy with a blue head that was acting out the howler. Right. You had all those sound cues that really helped everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, the lip smacking, licking.
Yeah.
You know, all the
little
noises,
dog things,
those dog things. Yeah, I mean, that's just, you know, just.
Well, I think people don't know the dog was on set. He was there the whole shoot. And I think that
Giving comments.
yeah, people got to see when you guys well, you did some kind of photography on him, right? Like
Yeah.
I got this whole photo shoot of my
Yeah.
dog on a white background because I kept saying that like the hair needs to look like that.
And we kept trimming hair off of him the
Yeah,
whole time
it's crazy.
and taking
Sampling his DNA. Yeah. He's quite the star without knowing it, you know. But he gets much better food now, so he's getting his payment. But the other, I guess, big creature. I mean, besides the Noti, obviously, which are little characters that had a lot of personality, was I mean the Purgle were kind of a strange swing because their scale really presented quite a challenge. It's almost like a landscape. How do we do something that's a living being that's that large that you believe is alive and we're interacting with? Because they can immediately look so fake. But, you know, like when we were kids, it's like the space slug, right? Like you just want to believe the thing's real in the moment in Empire Strikes Back. And so Ahsoka, though, has to kind of communicate with these things, especially when she's standing in front of it, the scale of it, the detail of it, you know, in the time that we had. So I don't know if you guys can talk about the process of bringing these whales to life, because they ended up being one of my favorite things in it. I think for a lot of people, it was something new and quite different, even though it's in Star Wars. It taps into what Star Wars can do so well, which is present the fantastic and make you believe in it. So what was that like?
I completely agree that the scale was probably one of the biggest challenges. Although I feel like everything was set up in a way where we always have scale cues close to it. So Ahsoka is on a T6 right in front of it. So that gives us an idea. Or the Purgles are going through clouds. That gives us an idea. Always having something that attaches to that creature and kind of tells us what the scale of it is. Of course, we're even flying within the mouth, which perfectly tells us what the span is of the mouth of the creature. It was, regardless, a challenge because it's kind of the power of two and so on. Like we just keep going closer and closer and closer, which means we had to redo or further improve the asset on almost constantly to kind of get to that level where it would hold up to the degree that we're having a close-up on the eye of this gigantic creature that is multiple miles long.
I thought what was really smart as well was the work that the texture artists put into the creature as well. And again, going back to the whole reference, looking at reference of blue whales and noticing the scarring that would happen on a blue whale's body, and obviously with the way that they heal, it's a little bit like a flesh color relative to the rest of the color of the blue whale, and kind of introducing some of that into the face, because it's one of those things that people immediately kind of recognize when you see things that are of that scale and that size. It kind of clues you in a little bit as to how big this thing could be. And it was the same when you guys presented turntables to Dave. It was always moving slowly, obviously, and clouds moving next to it, because you know how big clouds are, you know how they move as well. So constantly cluing us into how big this thing could be.
Absolutely. The scars were so helpful, and even like when you described the story to us that they're going through hyperspace and occasionally, you know, they're just hitting a ship, and that's how they're getting their scars, was a perfect way in for us to introduce those sort of surface imperfections.
I think too the clouds are bizarrely, it's strange to use this word, but grounding, because it's this massive thing floating. It has no wings. I don't, you know, it has lift. We describe they're like more like big balloons than anything else. But the clouds, the sense of movement, it makes it feel a little more oceanic, like they're in water. It gives them a lift. When we're first introduced to them, it's quite dark, and so they're more mysterious. And then we had them in those two very drastically different lighting environments, right? Where they are just like the sea monster, and it's all silhouetted shapes more, and then where they're quite beautiful, you know, and it's part of the story that, like, at first they could seem like there's something dangerous, but they're also something that can be wonderful. And the asset has to hold up for all of that too.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we want to do, obviously we looked at tons of reference, blue whales, giant squid, all of that kind of stuff. But really we wanted it to feel fluid within the air. So it feels like it's a creature in the water, and it's something recognizable and you're used to how it flows, you know, ripples through the body, right through to the tentacles and the tail. But then you put that in the sky, you know, moving through clouds, and it gives it kind of a interesting quality of seeing something move through water, but it's actually in the air, you know.
It's funny because we did them in traditional computer animation in Star Wars Rebels, and the live action ones have several features that those don't. And one of them, and I don't know if Doug added it in design, and then we animated it very specifically in live action, is on the side it has those kind of like wings off the body that
Cuttlefish.
ripple like a cuttlefish.
Yes.
And I think without that, they would have felt quite dead and lethargic up
Yeah.
there hanging. But with that, like you made me think of it when you said like the movement of water.
Yes.
It almost portrays a surface of water
Yeah, it does,
on the side of the body, and so that was really a big key that I think really helped sell those
Yeah.
beasts.
Getting because they're so big, it's hard. You want to move them slowly. You don't want to move too fast to keep the scale. But having those smaller elements on the body that we can move just gives it more visual interest.
Tentacles.
Yeah. Little tentacles and everything. Yeah.
And I jumped over the noti, but I don't want to completely bypass that because that's one of those cases that I don't think people realize. There are puppets, and the puppets for the noti really help drive the way that we interpret the animation and interaction of these creatures, so that they are going to feel like something that's more akin to what Yoda was in Empire. We don't take advantage maybe of all the things that computer animation allows for realistically, but it's more that philosophy of believability. I believe they're these real things, creatures, because we're watching the puppet performance, but then we're able to enhance that, actually take it over. Yeah. In many cases, just completely take it over. And, it sounds sad, right? We replaced the puppets, but we wouldn't have done it the way we did it without that collaboration with that traditional medium. And that's something we've been doing, all along with Star Wars now in this space, is this kind of collaboration between traditional puppetry and the animation team that I think renders something that is very familiar to the world of Star Wars, the language of movement, the language of creature movement.
Yeah, I think it's very Star Wars-esque to follow the puppeteers. We don't do animation tests with a creature before shooting.
Oh, really? That's
no.
Right, huh?
Yeah, we've done that. Many projects, we let the puppeteers come up with a character because, they're on set, they're getting notes from the director, and they're bringing their A game. They're amazing at what they do. And they bring character to these inanimate puppets, and they bring them to life. And what we want to do in CG is, after the fact, we don't want to influence that. We want that to evolve on set with, you and the puppeteers. And then when we get that footage back, we just want to, like you say, we can enhance, but we just want to match right into it. So it definitely feels like the puppet. And we just carry that performance through and on through the CG part of it so that we don't take the audience out of the moment. You're still looking at this, quirky, what do we call it? Endearing kind of, puppet, but it's in CG and nobody knows where that transition is.
Yeah, no.
Which is great.
Yeah. And the puppet gives the actor something on the day for her to really target. And Natasha's really naturally, I found, good at interacting with those things, which just lends more believability to the wonder of it. But also in believability land, and I don't think people would ever realize this, everything on that planet, Peridea, is shot largely within the same, I would say, less than football field size backlot, which is a little bit, even when I watch it, it's hard to believe. I don't think people would have any idea. Part of it's now the guessing game, right, where people like to try to guess, unlike any other time in film production, how did we do things? I was never as obsessed with that when I was little. I was just amazed that they did it at all, and it's such a different thing. But now the knowledge is out there. It's like we're always in danger, I feel, of like giving away the magic trick, and sometimes I don't want to talk about how we did stuff as much, but of course you guys, this is important for you, so I'll talk about it. But, I think that for me, again, we had to film everything there on that backlot or use the volume, and we're very specific about when we decide to use these different tools. Everything has its advantage and disadvantage, and I don't think people realize how much of a consideration we do before we ever go near the backlot or near the volume, and it has to work primarily for how we're going to tell the story. That's what drives the choice to be in that volume or not, and where the cameras are going to be, what type of scene it is. Because you don't want to put something in there or on the backlot if it's not going to be successful. Definitely, I think the DPs looking at the work that we were going to do and considering doing, the idea of silking the entire backlot became really key to the success. And then I was astonished at just the bare bones drop in of the coverage that you had done on location up in Scotland and how well it mixed with this plate that we'd shot in Manhattan Beach, where it was like sweltering hot, like everyone's dying, and yet it looks like they're in this desolate rock, you know, out in the middle of a Star Wars galaxy that we enhanced a little bit. But to me, that's one of the most amazing things in this live action world, is how real these environments can look, and you'd never guess how we shot it. So I don't know if you guys can talk a little bit about the process.
I'll hunt you with the shooting in a second.
Building a planet.
I honestly, most shows should work this way, and a lot of them do. But I think it's a testament to the way the heads of department worked on that show. When we all read on the page what this was going to be, you already kind of knew the kind of environment that you wanted. It was on the page. So then when Doug started kind of designing with his art department team, it was very clear that we were circling around a particular area in Scotland that was going to be the basis of this particular look. Then Andrew Jones, the production designer, goes out there many months before we actually got into prep and started taking photographs of this general location, which then again helps kind of inform the art department and how to kind of set up these particular environments. We found the rock that was going to have the fortress henge on top. And so that was a really good grounding. So from that point on, quite clearly, we were going to be shooting in LA, and we needed to kind of capture that environment. Now, a lot of times, you end up shooting the plates, and then you go afterwards and try and then shoot the coverage to match the plates. But we did it, as far as I'm concerned, the right way, in that we sent a team out, and Enrico can speak to in a second, that captured the environment and then brought it back. So to the degree where reference images that Enrico would curate of each of the individual rocks and the grasses and the flora and fauna, Richie Greens in the Greens department could actually match them against them and dry them out in California to make them feel like what they were in Scotland. And Andrew Jones would reject things that didn't have a match. So then once we had a patch of ground as a test that we felt like it would match, Enrico would put in the rest of Scotland around it and would validate, before we even started shooting, before the big sets were built, that was going to work. That for me was the huge win behind it. And then silking, of course, the backlot to match the lighting, because we were very fortunate that the lighting on the day in Scotland when Enrico was out there matched what you wanted to have in the script. But it was also key what you shot and how you shot.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that we went there so much in advance and capturing that same data that then every department can use and move forward. I mean, I was sometimes very much surprised how well these plans are matched, because every department just used the same reference and everybody chased the same elements. So by the time we actually got some plates through and we're putting our environments, our artificial environment behind it, right off the get-go, we had like a 75-80% match, which, yeah, that's the way you should be doing it. Everybody should be looking at the same elements. So it's fantastic that we found a location that you would like and everybody would chase after.
Well, I think there's two ways you look at it, right? Like a lot of times now, I think with digital technology, people use it as a means to fix stuff later, and they push things down the line. You'll hear a lot, well, you know, it's the old cliche, we'll fix it in post. I think that we all like the method where it's like, and I like coming from animation, I plan everything in advance. Yeah. I draw pictures, I illustrate, I find images I give those to Doug, the art department. We're all making the same story, and so we're all literally in the same place, looking at the same things. There's no guesswork, and you know, it's a fascinating thing. I've done it in animation for years, but like what I draw today will become what it is later. It's just going to be better than I ever thought it could be. Like that's my feeling, is that the sketch is a sketch. Even the script, you know, I think is like a sketch. It's like an outline. I'm not saying that this is it, we're doing this. It's like, here it is. This is everything I was thinking. It's all the information. Now, how do we make this real galaxy far, far away? What elements are? And there's a lot of things to study beyond just the natural world. It's also, there's an aesthetic to how we made the Star Wars movies in the past, what those teams did that obviously connects with audiences. George knew a way of telling a story that's very powerful. And how do we mine that? And it's in some ways, it's making the fantastic feel very everyday. The characters aren't amazed by their environments. The audience gets so caught up in the characters that they don't realize how extraordinary a city in the clouds is. Maybe it's just matter of fact in that world. And so when introducing bizarre elements, if it's a space whale or a witch fortress or any of these things, these are just the locations where we are. As surely as if we could just go there and film like it's a real place. It's how George treated everything. It's how we continue to treat it. But it's that preparation, because I don't like, I save that change on the back end for when things aren't going to work, like when we added the minefield, which was never part of the script. And we had to come with on the fly in post because I realized I had a repetitious story beat and I wanted something more unique. And so that was fun for me because I was doing all these storyboards, handing them to you. You were doing previs, and I was taking shots that we had, the episodic director had covered, and finding a new way to use them. And we were able to create a great sequence because everybody was so flexible and we'd spend our time the right way.
Yeah, I mean, usually what happens is you might say, I've got this idea as a director, go and previs that. And we go away and spend weeks or months prevising something, come back to you and go, is this what you wanted? And you go, well, not really. I had something else in mind. And then you go back and forth for a long time.
We don't have that kind of time.
We don't have that kind of time in TV. So it's great that we went up and we sat down and you drew storyboards and outlined the story of this is exactly how I think it should be.
And the football plays.
Yes, it was the football plays. I mean, I love those maps, saying this moves from here to here, and these are the shots that we're going to do in between. And we go away and we've got a clear idea there and go, yeah, we can make that happen. And we added some Easter eggs for you and a few extra little bits to make it work, as we do, But, I think when we came back and showed you the sequence, it's hopefully what you had in mind.
It was really, especially when they went into the debris field where the bones were. And you guys did the one where they dodged she dodges the one big piece of bone, the other ship smack right into it. And it's like, I knew what I wanted it to be, but I just couldn't ever draw that to make it feel right. But when you guys did it, you have such a great knowledge of those moments in these type of films that I was like, wow, that was such a fun, and that really jumped out at me. That's when, it's fun when you're, making something, you can still get excited about it like you've never seen it before. I have to feel like when something looks great, I don't think I had anything to do with it. I just enjoy watching it. Like, what's this cool, fun film? Oh, we made that. That's neat. But it should be that. Like it's. Kathy told me once. I asked her, "Why do you make the movies you make?" She said, "I just make movies I like to watch."
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what we get to do. Like, I love Star Wars, so I try to make a Star Wars I would want to watch and enjoy, and that's to work with ILM, on that process. Is there's nothing better for me as a creative, as a storyteller, to work with you guys and have you be part of the storytelling process. ILM and Star Wars is really bound together. It's a situation where we are, playing on our home field. We have to have this be excellent no matter what. It doesn't matter. It's like Yoda says, size matters not. The size of the screen doesn't matter. It has to be Star Wars, and Star Wars has to be big and amazing and
there's a legacy.
There's a legacy.
There's a legacy, and probably this more than any other show, largely because obviously a lot of the characters and a lot of the situations are from the Rebels and Clone Wars. The amount of research that everybody was doing to make sure that we had been respectful to what came before, what we needed to do. The work that, for example, TC was doing just in researching all the different versions of lightsabers, because there are many, many different versions of lightsabers and different treatments on screen. And obviously you had a very clear idea of what version of lightsabers you wanted to see. We obviously introduced a slightly different color, but it all matters, and it's all really, really important. Again, it's a lot of responsibility when it comes to that.
Yeah, but by and large, it is so fun to create those things, because there is a lot that we need to add. There is a lot we need to still come up with in this. It's not ready-made. Every lightsaber is going to sound unique when we design it, and then their blades are all kind of different and unique, and they speak to character more than anything else. They tell you something about the story when they ignite, and it has to feel a bit documentary in its own form, Star Wars. It has to sound and look real, and everybody talks about now how it's weathered and it's used, but that's not just on the ships. It's in the environment. It's in the costumes. So when we took the T6 Jedi shuttle was in Clone Wars, you know, and it is fun because a lot of, you know, your ILM people now are kids that watch Clone Wars now. We've been here long enough. They're old to work for us, which is kind of cool, and they're excited about it. But, you know, John had to make a model of the T6, and I said, well, this is a design that Doug did for the prequels for episode 1. We put it in Clone Wars and used it there. Now I want to bring it back in live action. I'd like to design it as if it was one of your models that you would have built. So, you know, bring what you bring to that art to this. And Doug, having, you know, worked with Ralph, designed it, illustrated a certain way, but the model building has to take over that. And it's integral to the way the thing's going to look in the end. The details that only that type of artist can add, can bring to the table, which is why we do it. It's a different way of thinking, you know, that John Goodson has been lucky enough to like pass on to, I think, a lot of people, but to see him build it, the tangible model is always a real treat. It's why we did it with the Razor Crest. The ship just feels a little different for all that care. So I don't know if you guys can speak to any of that process, because then it affects the way we build the CG model, like
And the practical set.
and the practical set
Yeah.
that they're
and all
standing on.
all is slightly different, and the CG model pulls it together.
Absolutely. I mean, starting with a practical model with a miniature, the amount of realism that just comes straight up comes with that. If it's panels that aren't perfectly aligned from one side to the other, if it's a paint drip that has a little bit of a scratch on it because we bumped it somewhere, hopefully not, but who knows? All that kind of realism that gets added by an actually human being touching and forming pieces, gluing those together, that is something that is extremely hard to replicate in computer graphics. So starting with that real model and essentially just building it up where we need it is just one of the greatest starting points you can have, honestly. Yeah.
But you guys did have to make a lot of kind of creative choices between, because we had the physical sets that were being built, and John Goodson was still kind of finishing up the miniature model, and then obviously we started shooting with both of those, and then we had to have the CG version, which you know that Gerald built in over 500 shots. Had to kind of reconcile some of the differences with the doors, with some of the details around there. How did you guys decide between where to keep detail and where to omit detail?
We build a T6 best of. So essentially wherever the element worked the best. So obviously when you build something on set that an actual human being is standing on and it's a life-size element, there's details that just can't be painted into a miniature. So therefore that built a fantastic base for us to kind of extend the same kind of surface details, the same kind of imperfections onto the rest of the ship. There are shots where we're then using the digital model just because of necessities, because we couldn't shoot it in a given shape or form. But we're always trying to keep everything alive that we can. So the set build just became part of the model.
The one thing I like about T6 is it moves. Things move on the ship.
Yeah.
You know, that's really interesting animation. Usually when you've got a spaceship, you're just flying it along, and
Yeah,
you can't really
yeah.
do much with it.
Yeah.
But, you know, we could rotate the wings around the
A little more
fuselage,
character.
and we could add more character to it. So that was a fun you know, element for us to do with the animation on the ship.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In a Star Wars movie, how many visual effects shots on average do you think there are?
Above 2,000, 2,000,
In our
2,500?
show like ours, how many visual effects shots are there?
Over 4,000?
Yeah. So, you know, I just bring it up so people can understand the amount of work going into a show like this. And I think we'd all say we expect it to be movie quality, and that's just not, that's just what the standard has to be. And this thing is something we're very proud of. We want these shows to be great for the audience so they can feel that it is the Star Wars galaxy that they know. There can't be any let up on it. And I think, well, I'll just say, I think you guys did a great job.